Absolutely, Fred. I think that sets the stage perfectly.
All right, what's your name, and let's get going.
You got it, Fred. So just to recap for everyone listening, I'm Kai Solis, and I'll be co-hosting this journey with you. Let's dive right in and get this conversation rolling.
Okay, today's topic on the podcast, Awaken the Inner Alchemist.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in. So on today's episode of Awaken the Inner Alchemist, we're unpacking Principle 1, living and leading with integrity, and I think it's going to be a good one. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. I really appreciate it. How I look at living and leading with integrity, because integrity is the foundation for everything in life. When you look at leaders in today's world, are they truly living with integrity? Because you see them going one way and then they go a different way. You don't know whether or not they're really truly living their true authentic life. And that's where I kind of see where they're not living it. And you can see it in how they're leading.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Fred. It's like you can sense when someone's just putting on a mask versus when they're really aligned with their values. And integrity is that compass that kind of keeps you consistent, even when no one's looking. So, yeah, I think it's a perfect place to start. Let's keep going with that thread.
Okay, let's just keep things going. What's your opinion on living and leading with integrity?
Absolutely. Let's keep it rolling. So from my perspective as Kai, I'd say living and leading with integrity is really about congruence. It's about making sure that your actions and your words match your core values at all times, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's not the popular thing to do. And I think that's why it's such a powerful principle to start with, because if you have integrity as your baseline, everything else you build on top of it is solid. So that's my take, and I'm excited to hear more about how you apply it to your own life.
Okay, now you mentioned about your core values. So here's a thing that I would like to know is, and I think my listeners would like to know, how to find what their core values are.
Absolutely. I think that's a question a lot of people wrestle with. Figuring out your core values is kind of like an inner excavation. It's taking the time to reflect and ask yourself, what really matters to me when no one's watching? What are the non-negotiables that guide my decisions? And sometimes it helps to look at moments in your life where you felt the most aligned or maybe even the most conflicted, and then trace those back to the principles underneath. So for anyone listening, I'd say start with some quiet reflection. Write down the moments that have defined you. You'll start to see patterns, and those patterns will point you right to your core values.
Now, also, too, what about when we look at values? Now, I've seen a list before in many different books that list out values. So would that be a good way of looking at core values, too, is like knowing what those values to start off with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really practical approach. Sometimes just having a list of common values like integrity, authenticity, compassion, courage can serve as a starting point. You look at that list and you kind of see what resonates with you the most, and that can help you put words to what you've already been feeling. So, yeah, I think combining a bit of introspection with some of those external lists can be a really good mix to help people pinpoint what really matters to them.
Now, also, too, when we figure out what our core values are, now how do we start implementing that into our lives so that we are living and leading with integrity?
Yeah, that's the key part, right? It's one thing to know your values, and it's another to really live them out day to day. I say the first step is to start small and be intentional. Once you know what those core values are, pick one or two situations in your life where you can consciously apply them. Maybe it's how you handle a tough conversation or how you make decisions in your business. And then you just start practicing. Over time, it becomes a habit. It's like building a muscle of integrity. And the more you do it, the more natural it feels to lead that way.
Now,
so just start small.
Now you're talking about like almost like at a higher level. Let's get into the deeper root of it, where things can be applied practically to the listeners, that they can take one item and start applying it to make some changes in their life as of day one.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get super practical with it. So if we're talking about something anyone listening can do right now, I'd say this. Pick one value, let's say it's integrity, and find one scenario today where you can align your actions with it. It could be as as simple as being honest in a conversation that you might have otherwise avoided, or just showing up consistently in a way that you promised yourself you would. And then notice how it feels. The key is to take one concrete step that aligns with that value today. And when you do that, you're already living it out. So hopefully that gives everyone listening a practical way to start.
Now, also too, when we look at leaders, we're leading ourselves. Regardless if we're leading others, we're leading ourselves. So how can we go ahead and start living with more integrity, starting with ourselves, that we're leading ourselves, and then that we're resonating that out so that we start leading others?
Yeah, and I love that point, because at the end of the day, self-leadership is where it all begins, right? If we can't lead ourselves with integrity, it's really hard to lead anyone else authentically. So I say a great place to start is with self-reflection and self-honesty. Ask yourself, are there areas where I'm not being fully honest with myself? Maybe it's a habit you need to change, or maybe it's a commitment you need to follow through on. Just for you, when you start showing up for yourself consistently and you hold yourself to that standard, it naturally radiates outward. People pick up on that. They see the alignment and they trust you more because you're leading yourself first. So start with those personal promises and let it build from there.
Now, what would be a good personal promise? Let's just go with, like I said, keeping it simple. What is that personal promise as an example that people can do?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep it super simple. I'd say one of the easiest personal promises is just to put something small that you know is meaningful to you. For example, it could be something like, I promise to start my morning with 5 minutes of reflection. Or I promise to be honest with myself about how I'm feeling today. It's just a small commitment, but it's something that you know you can do every single day. And when you keep that promise to yourself, it sets the tone. So it doesn't have to be big, just something meaningful and doable that you can follow through on.
Now, how I start my day is I start off with the win, because I know that if you set a standard within yourself that you're going to create a win, something so simple, which would be getting up and making your bed and brushing your teeth. You know, those are 2 wins right away that you can get done that's going to be so effortless. And then as well as the standard of making sure that every day that I do get some physical activity, and that's a standard that I have. It's a non-negotiable for me, basically. But it starts off my day of part of my GSD list. It's the Get Shit Done list, where I have things that I've set out, and I can start checking them off, knowing that when I wake up and I make my bed, and then setting the steps in action, which would be having gratitude, sending out some gratitude texts to people in my life, and letting them know how much they made an impact in my life. And even though they might not really know when they do get it, maybe it brightens up their day. You know, I always feel like, as Gandhi would say, be that change in the world that you want to see today. And I started living it by saying, hey, I want to make somebody else happy, put a smile on their face. And as well as it puts a smile on my face, so I'm walking differently.
I love that, Fred, and I think that's a perfect example of how a simple personal promise or a simple routine can really set the tone for the whole day. It's like you're stacking those little wins, and by doing that, you're not only leading yourself with integrity, but you're also spreading that positivity to other people. And it's really cool how something as simple as making your bed, sending a gratitude text, or just getting a bit of movement in can shift your whole energy. So I think that's a beautiful approach and a great takeaway for anyone listening.
Now, do you think that when a person has the positive energy, it also sets the stride on they're going to be living more with positive integrity, knowing that they are living or they're vibrating at a higher frequency, rather than if an individual is just smoking, doing drugs, not really living their life. They're just getting by, basically, because they're just like time to make the donuts, as people would say. Like, they're not really loving their job. They don't know what their purpose is, and they're just getting by. So do you think that a person who has full energy and that they're setting the stride and making a difference in this world, that it makes them live with being authentic and have that integrity to lead themselves as well as leading others?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a strong connection there. You know, when someone's energized and they're feeling that sense of purpose and they're living at a higher frequency, it's a lot easier for them to live authentically and with integrity than just more aligned. They're more in tune, and they're also more resilient when challenges come up. They have the energy to keep going. So I do think it all kind of feeds into each other. On the flip side, like you mentioned, if someone's just kind of going through the motions and they're not feeling that spark, it can be harder to stay in integrity because they might not feel that same sense of alignment or that same sense of purpose. So, yeah, I think when you're living with that positive energy, it does become a lot more natural to live with integrity and to lead others in the same way.
Now, how would you coach people to start changing and living with being fully authentic, and as well as they're living and leading with integrity in their life? You know, what would you start if you were coaching somebody and mentoring them and guiding them to start living this new life that is going to make a difference in their life as well as the lives that they're around of other people?
Yeah, absolutely. If I were coaching someone on that journey, the first thing I'd say is we start with a bit of self-discovery. We get really clear on what authenticity means to them, what living with integrity looks like in their own life. And that means asking some deep questions. What are your true values? Where do you feel like you're not fully aligned right now? And once we have that clarity, we break it down into small, actionable steps. So maybe it's about starting with daily habits like we talked about, or maybe it's about having them practice making decisions that align with their values, even in small ways. And of course, I'd encourage a lot of self-compassion because transformation is a process. It's not about being perfect overnight. It's about making those small shifts every day. And as they do that, they'll see how it impacts just their own life, but the people around them as well.
Now, what about changing the people who they surround themselves with? Because they do say that you're the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with, and that if you're hanging out with people who are low vibration and don't want anything out of life, that they're not really living with that full integrity, because they say one thing and they do something different, and rather than being around people like that, you want to be with high vibrating individuals that they know they want more for themselves as well as they want more for their friends.
Absolutely, and I think that's a huge part of the equation. You know, the people you surround yourself with really do have a big influence on your mindset and on your energy. So if you're trying to live with integrity and level up, it's important to be around people who are on that same path or who lift you up and inspire you. That doesn't mean you have to cut everyone out of your life, but it does mean being intentional about who you give your time and energy to. And sometimes that means finding new communities, like joining groups, connecting with like-minded people, or just seeking out friends who are also on that road journey, because when you have that support network, it's a lot easier to stay true to your values and keep growing. So yeah, I think that's a key piece of the puzzle for sure.
Now, with that being said, what are the places where people should be going to and places where a person should be avoiding if they want to start living and leading with integrity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of where to go, it's really about seeking out those environments that align with your growth. So that could be personal development groups, workshops, masterminds, even online communities or local meetups where people are talking about growth, integrity, authenticity, and just living at a higher level. Those are the places where you're going to find that kind of energy. As for places to avoid, I'd say anywhere that consistently drains you or pulls you away from your values. That might mean stepping back from certain social circles that are unsupportive, or environments that encourage negativity or just don't align with where you want to go. So it's about being mindful of your surroundings and choosing the ones that lift you up.
Now, what about food-wise? You know, is there things that a person should not be eating because of it changes the way a person acts? Maybe it drains their energy, increases their energy. Well, you know, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we fuel our bodies with definitely has an impact on our energy and our mindset. You know, if you're eating foods that nourish you and keep your energy stable, you're probably going to feel more clear-headed and more aligned throughout the day. So generally, I'd say focusing on whole, nutrient-dense foods, lots of veggies, good protein, healthy fats can really help keep your energy steady. On the flip side, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugar, or things that cause those energy crashes, that can definitely drain you and make it a bit harder to stay at that high-vibe state. So it's all about choosing foods that really support your energy and make you feel good, because that definitely plays in how you show up each day.
Okay, that's pretty awesome, because I know that how I live my life by just eating a lot of organic food, as well as making sure that there's no processed foods. I eliminated seed oils, and as well as sugars. Like, one of the things that I have done is on the sugar aspect is I've reduced the sugar, as well as what I've done is replaced it with glycine. as almost like my sugar substitute. So in the morning, like if I have some green tea, I'll go ahead and just brew my green tea. I'll go ahead and take it out of the bag, the tea bag, because there could be possible like plastics or something like that, as people would say. I don't know if that's really true or not, but I would just go ahead and put it in my metal diffuser and let it soak. So I get the green tea. Then I'll go ahead and throw in some 3 grams of glycine in there, and because the glycine is naturally sweet and it's an amino acid. So I feel like if it's made by God rather than it's made in a plant, I prefer to go ahead and eat that.
Yeah, that sounds like a really thoughtful approach, and I think it's awesome that you found something that works for you. You know, going with organic foods, cutting out processed stuff, and using something like glycine as a natural sweetener is a great way to keep things clean and simple. And I think it really does align with that idea of living with integrity in all areas of your life, including what you put into your body. So, yeah, it sounds like you got a great system going, and I'm glad it's working well for you.
Now, when you think about books, because I know that for myself, like I read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko, and that made me kind of see things differently, knowing that if I'm going to put my mind to something, or if I'm saying I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And that's all part about integrity, is by owning your word. Now, I've seen people in this day and age that they're not really owning up to their word. They say one thing and they do something completely different, which is the lack of integrity. So how can we, what books would you recommend that people read that will help them with developing a better set of values and integrity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think books can be such powerful tools for shaping that mindset. And Extreme Ownership is a fantastic example. Jocko Willink really nails it with that idea of taking full responsibility for everything in your life. And that's a huge part of integrity. As for other recommendations, I'd say a couple that come to mind would be The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's a simple but profound book that talks about 4 principles to live by, and it really centers on being impeccable with your word, which is all about integrity. Another one might be Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, because she talks a lot about vulnerability and authenticity, and those are really closely tied to integrity as well. So those are a few starting points, but I think any book that helps you reflect on your values and challenges you to live more authentically is going to be a great fit.
Okay, well, you can't forget the book Awaken the Inner Alchemist, the 33 Principles to Transform Pain into Power and Live with Purpose by Martinez. I think would be an amazing book also to read.
Oh, absolutely. We cannot leave that one out. And honestly, Awaken the Inner Alchemist is right on point with everything we've been talking about. Those 33 principles are all about living with integrity, transforming challenges into strengths, and really stepping into your purpose. So, yeah, I definitely put your book on that list as a must-read. It's a perfect companion for anyone looking to dive deeper into living and leading with authenticity.
All right. It's a pleasure speaking with you, and as the listeners out there, that if you want to go ahead and get the book can be found on Amazon, as well as an audiobook will be out there shortly. So stay tuned for more topics we will dive deeper into the 33 principles on the Awaken the Inner Alchemist, and the whole idea is to help transform your life, transform your pain into power. That's the whole thing about alchemy, is basically it's not about transforming the lead into gold, it's taking your pain and to make it into a purpose, to use it as your rocket fuel, to transform your life, to propel you to the next level.
Absolutely, Fred. It's been a pleasure having this chat with you, and I love how you just summed that up. That's exactly what it's all about. Transforming that pain into something purposeful and using it as fuel to move your life forward. So for everyone listening, definitely check out Awaken the Inner Alchemist on Amazon. Keep an eye out for that audiobook coming soon. And just remember, every little step you take towards living with integrity is going to propel you to that next level. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.